Please welcome the American Heart Association's Chief Executive Officer, Nancy Brown.
Welcome to the American Heart Association Scientific Sessions 2016, the world's premier conference for cutting-edge cardiovascular disease and stroke science. We are honored that you have joined us, and we hope you'll embrace this opportunity to engage with colleagues and hear from thought leaders in your field. Before we begin, I'd like to comment on the significance of this meeting being held in New Orleans. Last year, New Orleans passed comprehensive smoke-free legislation, a great demonstration of this city's commitment to the health of its residents and to visitors like us. We are proud to be supporting New Orleans by hosting our meeting here. I have the privilege today to announce several partnerships that will improve the lives of patients. Last year at this meeting, we announced a partnership between the American Heart Association and the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute to crowdsource compelling ideas for comparative effectiveness research in precision medicine. Since then, we have sought insights from patients, caregivers, clinicians, and researchers to help us better understand the needs of patients. Today, I'm proud to announce a new $5 million AHA PCORI co-funded Grand Challenge Award to build on these insights. This partnership has been made possible by the extraordinary generosity of dear friends and longtime supporters of the American Heart Association, David and Stevie Spina, who have donated $2.5 million, which PCORI has matched. This gift adds to the Spina's powerful legacy of philanthropy. We are so grateful to David and Stevie for setting this pace. As you know, 1 in 3 Americans are living with high blood pressure, which is why the American Heart Association has made this a major focus of our work. Last year, we announced target blood pressure and a new relationship with the American Medical Association to improve clinical care for blood pressure. Today, it's my honor to announce a new nationwide venture between the American Heart Association and the YMCA of the USA. Leveraging the Y's extraordinary community presence and self-management program with the AHA's hypertension resources, we intend to transform communities. We are pleased to have in the audience today several national and local leaders of the YMCA. We thank them for this tremendous partnership. Last month, we announced that the American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association have joined together to create a single, comprehensive set of cardiovascular accreditation services for hospitals. Starting in 2017, hospitals will be able to take advantage of this suite of AHA-ACC co-branded accreditation services focused on all aspects of cardiac care. By leveraging our unique capabilities, the AHA and ACC will accelerate and expand our impact on patients' lives across the country. And as part of the AHA's Institute for Precision Cardiovascular Medicine, I'm pleased to announce today the launch of a new AHA BEAR Innovation and Discovery Grants Program focused on research that addresses unmet medical needs. And finally, I'm excited to announce the launch of Target Cholesterol, made possible by a $6 million gift from Sanofi Regeneron. I'm inspired by the difference that each of these partnerships will make on the lives of patients across the country. I'd like to also give special thanks today for the outstanding work and leadership of the American Heart Association's Committee on Scientific Sessions program. The committee is led by Chairman Dr. Frank Selke of Brown University Medical School and the Rhode Island Hospital, and Vice Chairman Dr. Eric Peterson from the Duke Clinical Research Institute. Please join me in a round of applause for Drs. Selke, Peterson, and the entire Committee on Scientific Sessions program. And now it's my honor to introduce Dr. Stephen Hauser, President of the American Heart Association. Dr. Hauser is Senior Associate Dean of Research and Chairperson of the Department of Physiology, as well as Director of the Cardiovascular Research Center at Temple University School of Medicine in Philadelphia. During nearly 40 years of volunteer service to the American Heart Association, he has made countless enduring contributions to our mission of building healthier lives free of cardiovascular diseases and stroke. Please join me in welcoming a wonderful volunteer and dear friend, Dr. Stephen Hauser.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to Scientific Sessions 2016 in the finally smoke-free city of New Orleans. It's a pleasure to be back in this exciting environment. I truly hope your next few days are filled with memorable and meaningful experiences. No matter whether this is your first time at Scientific Sessions or if you've come so often that you've stopped counting, I thank you for joining us from across the U.S. and around the world to explore the latest developments in cardiovascular science. I am honored to stand before you as the President of the American Heart Association and the American Stroke Association. It's my privilege today to share my personal journey as a cardiovascular scientist and as an AHA volunteer, and to delve into the key themes of my presidential tenure: scientific discovery, developing the next generation of cardiovascular scientists, and of course, the prevention of cardiovascular diseases and stroke. My personal journey as a cardiovascular scientist began, oddly enough, on the basketball court. I love basketball. After 4 years of shooting almost every ball that was passed my way at a Division III school, it turned out that no NBA team was interested in an undersized power forward. So I moved to a graduate program in medical physiology at Temple University School of Medicine in my hometown of Philadelphia. 2 years into my training, I was involved in the study of the neuromuscular junction in the lobster, which is a model of the synapses in the human central nervous system. It was a great project. My duties included weekly trips to the docks to pick out fresh lobsters. I ate really well as a graduate student. But then the real world intervened. My dad became very sick. So let me tell you a little bit about my dad. Robert Harold Hauser was a great husband to my mom and a great father to me and my sister. Baseball and fishing were our shared passions. If he wasn't helping me get better at hitting curveballs or stopping grounders, then we were probably catching bass in Maine or sitting on the sofa watching a Phillies game or an Eagles game. Like many men of his generation, my father served in World War II. He didn't talk much about the war with me. All I really know is that he was a radio man in the Navy, and he saw action in the Pacific. And he came home with a 3-pack-a-day smoking habit that he never kicked. Bob Hauser was a hardworking member of the middle class. His primary goals in life were to love his high school sweetheart, my mom, and to provide for his children, so that we could have greater opportunities than he had, like all of you do for your families. My dad was also soft-spoken. He was not a complainer, not even when his body sent him warning signals that something was wrong. My dad was 43 when he suffered what he dismissed as a chest cold. He never sought treatment. He missed just 1 day of work. About 7 years later, my dad was diagnosed with congestive heart failure, and that's when things got really bad really quickly. I was in the lab at Temple studying my lobsters when my mom called and said, "You've got to come home." Those were the early days of cardiac catheterizations, and my dad had one, and it showed that the episode he considered a chest cold actually had been a large myocardial infarction, and now he had a ventricular aneurysm and congestive heart failure. His surgeon discussed repairing the aneurysm but didn't think my dad would survive the surgery. His care team tried their best to treat him, but he lived only a year longer. Heart disease took my dad at just 51 years of age, and I'm 65 this year. And his death changed my career. During his decline, I began my education in cardiology. I remember sitting in my dad's hospital room, watching his PVCs, and then running to the library to read what I could find on ventricular arrhythmias. Those were the days of libraries. Every change in his condition sent me in search of more reading materials. I especially devoured papers from Gene Braunwald's group, and I became hooked. I loved the field, and of course, I now felt a deep personal connection. I went to my advisor and I switched my thesis topic to a study of failing cardiac muscle, and I decided to devote my life's work to helping develop the knowledge needed to best treat patients with heart failure secondary to myocardial infarction. Let me frame it this way. The American Heart Association uses the tagline, "Life is why." It's a great tagline. Well, starting in 1977, defeating my dad's disease became my why. My initial work sought to find ways to make a failing heart stronger and to prevent lethal cardiac arrhythmias. I would go on to spend more than 25 years working on those two topics. It was an amazing period of new scientific discovery. A host of new tools such as single-cell electrophysiology and calcium imaging came onto the scene, and a collection of cardiovascular scientists throughout the world began to unravel the mysteries of normal cardiac myocyte physiology. Studies in my field defined the fundamental bases of normal cardiac function and the cellular and molecular underpinnings of human heart failure. These discoveries led to the development of better therapies to treat patients who suffer from cardiovascular diseases, including heart failure. One early hypothesis of heart failure research was that if we could increase the contractility of weak myocytes in the failing heart, we would improve its poor pump function. We learned what made failing myocytes weak, and we developed novel inotropic therapeutics to enhance their contractility. Many of these drugs improved cardiac function and made patients feel better, and are still useful to bridge patients through transient periods of acute cardiac dysfunction. Unfortunately, some of these drugs also had a propensity to cause lethal cardiac arrhythmias. Clinical trials showed that chronic treatment with many of these drugs put patients at higher risk of sudden death. About this time, a brave group of investigators made the surprising discovery that beta-adrenergic receptor antagonists, drugs thought to be contraindicated in heart failure because they have the potential to make weak hearts even weaker. Well, we found these drugs could actually improve cardiac structure and function and would prolong patients' lives. So what had our collective experimental results taught us? After a heart attack, the surviving myocytes have to work harder than normal, and this persistent excessive workload induces a change in their phenotype, making them prone to electrical abnormalities that can cause sudden death. Importantly, we also learned that persistent disease stress causes a slow rate of cardiac muscle cell death, and that this progression of death contributes to heart failure progression. When I teach my students about this scenario, I use the analogy of people pushing a sled up a snowy hill. If you take away some of the pushers, those who remain obviously must push even harder. And over time, they get tired, and some might even die. About 10 years ago, I had one of my many scientific epiphanies. Clinical data showed that the therapies that worked best to prolong the lives of heart failure patients were those that limited rather than increased excessive myocyte workload. Based on these data, I concluded that progressive weakening of myocytes in the failing heart was the effect of, rather than the cause of, heart failure, and that increasing the contractility of these myocytes does not address the actual cause of the problem. The answer was right in front of me. There just were not enough myocytes in a heart with a myocardial infarction to perform normal pump function. Making overworked myocytes work even harder was not addressing the primary problem. So using our analogy, forcing tired workers to push harder was not likely to be a long-term solution to get that sled up the hill. The problem was that we had lost pushers, so the solution was simple. We needed to add new pushers, restoring the original conditions. The data we had all collected prompted me to reevaluate the focus of my laboratory. I was proud of the tremendous advances that had been made in my field. When we started, we knew little of the fundamental biology of cardiac, electrical, and mechanical function, but now we understood them. New drug therapies were available. Novel devices to further improve cardiac performance and treat lethal arrhythmias had become commonplace. However, I now believe that increasing the contractility of weakened myocytes in heart failure patients was not going to fix the actual problem. So I changed the focus of my laboratory and joined a host of new colleagues who began to test the hypothesis that a real cure for myocardial infarction requires regenerative therapies that actually add new myocytes and vasculature to the failing heart. When I started this new journey, I was an old dog, but I decided to change the focus of my laboratory anyway. Many of my colleagues questioned the wisdom of my decision, but I decided to go for it. My goal had always been to learn things that could benefit patients, and I felt that this was my best path forward. So once again, I turned to my dad's case and I began to chart a new course in trying to save others from his fate. When my dad had his heart attack, a big part of his heart died and was replaced by scar tissue. He simply didn't have enough muscle mass left to provide normal function. So true repair of the heart after myocardial infarction would require replacing the lost vasculature and muscle mass. Thus, my current science studies how a heart repairs itself after an MI, and we are searching for new therapeutic strategies to replace lost heart tissue. I am certain that if this field develops the new knowledge required to understand new myocyte and vascular formation in the adult heart, we can translate this knowledge into safe and effective therapeutics. The holy grail in this relatively new field is finding a safe way to regenerate myocytes and vasculature that are lost to ischemic insults. As usual, I thought it would be easy. We just find a therapeutic that's cardiogenic, treat the damaged heart, and we're good to go. However, as individuals in this field have all come to learn, inducing cardiac regeneration in the adult heart is not easy. So, my friends, the honeymoon phase for this field is over, and now it's time for us to do the heavy lifting. This is an important and challenging clinical issue, but I strongly believe that given the scientific intellect that's addressing this problem, new therapies that produce new cardiac tissue can be developed if we follow the data. I am humbled to be part of this exciting new research area. No matter my area of research focus, I have both a passion for scientific discovery and a passion for training the next generation of cardiovascular scientists who could develop better therapies for patients with sick hearts. I believe the change of focus in my laboratory exemplifies this. This is why I urge all my colleagues, including young investigators and early career professionals here today, to have the passion, confidence, and courage to follow their data, rather than any preconceived ideas of how people think things might work. For our science to have an impact on patient care, we will all need to perform well-designed, basic, translational, and clinical research that produces reliable, readily validated data sets. These results should provide the foundation for new therapies that can improve and extend patients' lives. I must point out that the American Heart Association's support for my research fellows and for me has been essential to any success I have had in my laboratory. I love to tell the story of my first AHA grant because of how pivotal it was for my career. When I started my laboratory, I was determined to study fundamental aspects of cardiac myocyte remodeling in human heart failure. My first NIH grant on this topic was turned down, not once, not twice, but back in my day, 3 straight times. In fact, my score got progressively worse with each resubmission. Sometimes I'm not a good listener. At that time, there was a feeling that PhD scientists should not be studying mechanisms of disease. And my colleagues told me this, how times have changed. I was undeterred. I took my ideas to what was then the Philadelphia chapter of the AHA and sought the equivalent of the current Scientist Development Grant. My grant was awarded on the first submission. I received the grand sum of $7,500 over 2 or 3 years. I don't remember. Emboldened by my success and with a little more data, I was ready to try again with the NIH. I figured out how to better present my ideas, and I've been an NIH-funded investigator ever since. I've received NIH funding in excess of $25 million. Now that's a great return on an AHA investment. Thank you. From the moment my AHA grant was awarded, I proudly became an AHA volunteer. I did my homework and realized the AHA was the professional organization whose mission was aligned with my career and personal goals. During my 35 years as a volunteer, I have reviewed countless AHA grants, served my affiliate in numerous roles, and served as chair of the Basic Cardiovascular Sciences Council and as the AHA Research Committee chair. And now I'm so fortunate and honored to serve as AHA president. I also take great pride in the fact that while I'm the 80th president, I am the first PhD basic scientist to hold this position. Thank you. As my AHA involvement has ramped up, so has my understanding of this organization's scope, which is really vast. I discovered perspectives beyond science. I learned that I could also impact public health through advocacy, consumer awareness, and fundraising. The AHA has long been a top funder of cardiovascular and stroke research, investing more than $4 billion to date. Only the federal government spends more. And of course, that NIH funding is critical. Our advocacy team is always squarely focused on increasing NIH funding. Of course, they also continue to rack up victories in a number of other areas. We all must ensure that lawmakers on both sides of the political aisle are aware of the importance of scientific discovery to save lives and to improve our economy. Thank you. When I'm fortunate enough to have FaceTime with an elected official, I always keep my message very simple. I tell them we should invest in health research because a healthy America is a productive, proud, and strong America. I enjoy stretching beyond science in my role as AHA president. I take special interest in being a champion for the next generation of cardiovascular scientists and thought leaders. This summer, we held our first AHA Research Academy. It was really great. About 275 newcomers and experienced investigators discussed topics ranging from the future of clinical trials in the era of precision medicine to the essential role of patients acting as co-pilots to their doctors. In my view, today is an incredibly exciting time for early career investigators beginning in academic medical research. The scientific toolbox that they have has expanded so much. When I started, there were no genomics, proteomics, metabolomics. There was no real precision medicine as we think of it today. But now we have the ability to unravel so many of nature's mysteries. That's why we created the AHA's Institute for Precision Cardiovascular Medicine. This new knowledge will teach us things about the fundamentals of health and the bases of disease. I am confident that this will help us develop better ways to treat patients or groups of patients with cardiovascular diseases, including stroke. But there are significant challenges in front of us. How will we sift through these huge new data sets to find those few nuggets of information that will guide us to more effective therapies? This will require new types of scientific expertise. And as I mentioned, the AHA is keenly focused on continuing its leadership role, not only in training the next generation of cardiovascular scientists, but also by focusing their explorations on unmet clinical needs. At the request of our donors and patients, we have developed strategically focused research networks that address important unresolved clinical issues. We've launched networks studying prevention, hypertension, disparities, stroke, and women and heart disease. In May, we announced our heart failure research network. And next year, we will launch networks dedicated to obesity and then to children. A critical priority for the AHA is working toward enhanced prevention of cardiovascular diseases. And again, I start with my dad's case. My dad smoked. He ate a diet that was not what we would call heart healthy, and I along with him. He likely had high cholesterol and high blood pressure. Of course, that was typical for his generation. I often wonder whether my dad could have avoided heart disease had he lived in today's era where we're empowered to reduce our risks. For instance, what if he'd been exposed to Life's Simple 7 and had controlled his blood pressure and his cholesterol? What if I'd been able to help him quit smoking? I'm sure we all agree that the best way to treat ischemic heart disease is to keep people from having it in the first place. While our prevention efforts and, of course, our work in treating acute cardiovascular events have had a profound impact, we cannot relax. We must remain vigilant. Because if this recent data holds, then serious problems are on the horizon. Adding to this concern is the rise of type 2 diabetes among teens. If these trends are not reversed, we can expect to see a rise in vascular disease once these young people become adults. And then we will give back so many of the gains we've made in recent years. We also know that specific prevention strategies may work for some individuals and populations, but not for others. So we need to do more research to help us understand which strategies work best in which circumstance. The evidence we already have and the new information we can gain will help us build a culture of health, where the healthy choice is the default choice. This concept has no boundaries. Just as the AHA likes to say, life is why, we also believe that science is how and community is where. This can happen if we work together to continue building on this culture of health. For instance, my fellow basic scientists, your discoveries can provide key information that is used in offices, hospitals, and classrooms to improve health. My personal prescription for cardiovascular health includes a brisk walk each day and a few less Philly cheesesteaks, or while I'm here, a few less beignets. I urge everyone to take control of their own health and to work collectively to improve the culture of health in the U.S. and around the world. This culture of health must be inclusive. It must also be dedicated to equal, respectful treatment for people of all races, genders, and religions. As I wrap up, I want to thank a few people who have blessed my professional and personal life. I have been so fortunate to spend my entire career at the Lewis Katz School of Medicine at Temple University. This school has generously supported me and given me the freedom to pursue my passion, and for this I am truly grateful. I am also grateful for the 100+ students and fellows who have trained in my laboratory and who have heard me expand upon my philosophies about science and life. God bless them. I am particularly thankful for the hard work of two longtime lab members, Dr. Hajime Kubo and Remus Beretta. I am also sincerely thankful for my colleagues in BCVS who have generously shared their ideas and their collective spirit with me for so many years. I also would not be standing here today without my family and friends. Two of my dearest friends, Greg and Denise Day, are in the audience, and I want to thank them for their love and support over the past decades. Most of all, I need to thank my wife, Dr. Beth Bailey, who puts up with me, for her unconditional love and support. She is my rock and she is my best friend. I am also thankful for our daughters, Ellie and Emily, great young women who I am extremely proud of. I'm also grateful for my dad, both as a parent and as my alpha patient. As you've heard today, he still fuels my passion to help people who suffer from ischemic heart disease. I am as passionate about this mission today as I was sitting at his bedside 40 years ago. I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Today we have unprecedented opportunities to improve people's health. I urge you to find new ways to help someone live their life free of cardiovascular diseases and stroke. Something brought you to Scientific Sessions. Whatever that motivation is, let this meeting continue to stoke it and to inspire you. So thank you again for listening to my story, and please enjoy this meeting. It's a great meeting.